Hey guys, it's Lisa with LisaListen.com, the blog Are You My Cousin? And I want to welcome you to another Thursday afternoon here where we talk about all things genealogy on our Facebook Live each week. Now, this week we're talking about school records, and I have a really cool story to share with you as we wait for people to kind of come in. But as you're coming in, if you don't mind just giving me a thumbs up, let me know that you can hear and see everything is working well for you guys, that you can hear it as we go. So if you are watching this live, I want to welcome you. Feel free to add comments as we go along because I can see those pop up as we talk and chat together. If you are watching a replay on Facebook, or if you are actually watching this on YouTube, know that this is the replay for a Facebook Live that I've done. So I'm really excited that you guys are here. Feel free to add comments, even if you're watching the replay, because I do follow up on those comments even after we're not live anymore. And I would love to know kind of what you think and any suggestions that you might have as we go through our topic today, which is school records. Hey, Faye, thanks for joining us today. I'm glad you're here. So I want to tell you about this really cool thing that happened to me last weekend before we get started. And it actually has to do with school records, which is exactly what we're talking about today. I was visiting my parents and ran into some folks who had some mutual friends, and they were just talking about a recent renovation they did. They had a beautiful historic home in the section in the town where my parents lived, and they literally had gutted it from down to the studs and just done a beautiful, beautiful restoration of this historic house. And I think it was built around in the mid 1860s, maybe perhaps right after the Civil War. And they mentioned that they had found some really interesting papers in the walls. That once they took the walls down, the plaster down, they found these really interesting papers. And one was had to do with a minister's journal, and one had to do with a teacher's records. And so as we were talking and I was expressing my interest, I was invited to go over and see these records. So I jumped on it. Guys, when she pulled out to show me the school record that she found, or the teacher's records that she found, she said they're notes. It has the children's names in it. Okay, it was all I could do not to do a genealogy happy dance right there in somebody's home I've never met before. Because what she had was literally a school census record or a school register for Lincoln County, North Carolina. And it was dated like 1882, 1883. I really could not believe that she had this record, that they had found it in the walls of their home. So if they hadn't done this restoration, that record would still be sealed up in the walls. So I'm going to help them get in touch with the archives and see what we can do to restore that record. But just an amazing, amazing find that they had there. I just was shocked, but it was a really cool record to see. All right. Hey, Norma, thanks for joining us today. So as you can know, we're talking about school records. And if you saw the post this week, that's exactly what we were talking about. Now, that record that we saw in my parents' friend's house was a school register. And these are some of the best records or my favorite records when it comes to school records, because just right up front, we're not talking about like individual student records or private records, those kinds of things. We're talking about records that were kept either by teachers. The school census record these were county level records. So these were kept, the teacher kept it, but they were county level records, and that's where you're going to find them, at the county level. Now, the reason a school census is so important to your research is the type of information that it contains. First and foremost, it contains a list of the pupils. So a list of the children who attended school. And typically it's, oftentimes it's male and female records, or males and female students. So think about that. When you have, you're looking for female ancestors, a school census record is a place to find female ancestors. They could be young, or maybe your ancestor was the teacher. These are records where you can find evidence of your female ancestors. It's also a place to find sometimes children that maybe you weren't as sure about, or it could be, if other records are destroyed, it could be the only mention of a child. If they were between census years, this might be the only mention you would ever find of that child. So that's an important place to look. One of the reasons those census records are really important. So typically, as I said, you have that list of students, male and female students. Okay. Oftentimes, you can find they might list the parents' names or the guardian's name. Now, this really does vary It varies from place to place. It varies over the time period, as we know all genealogical records do. So it changes it changes over time as to what was included. Now, I have seen them on more than one occasion where a parent's name, either the parent or the guardian, typically, if it's a two-parent household, you're going to see the father listed. I don't usually see both parents listed. I usually just see one, and it's typically the father. If I see one where just the mother is named and not a father, I'm probably going to explore that family more if that's the family I'm interested in, because that may indicate that that woman is a widow, that she is the head of the household as opposed to the husband. So that's a little bit of a clue that you can pick up there, which can be helpful. I have seen where beside the parent's name, the father's name, where they will put an occupation. In fact, that's an example of the one I give if you read the original blog post, which actually, let me drop that in the comments real quick, guys, so you can see that. They actually put in the husband or the father's, there you go, it should pop into the comment section there in just a sec, guys, where beside the father's name, they put his occupation. Now, it seems like whenever I'm researching my own personal ancestor, it always just says farmer, because that's kind of, it was rural North Carolina at the time. So, but you can see what they did and where they were at. Now, the other really wonderful thing, certainly with the students, is it will sometimes give their ages. And with an age, then you can infer a birth year. So this is actually a way to find a birth date for an individual, perhaps when no formal record exists for a birth. So that would be a way to do that as well. You can also determine sibling groups for individuals. So this is kind of an interesting thing when you look at with a family, because think about the children going to school, and if they're living within close proximity to other family members, other cousins, and they're all going to the same school, maybe you're having trouble differentiating which children belong to which family, or which parent, who's the parent of which child, or are they aunts and uncles. It gets kind of messy sometimes with these large families trying to sort all that out. Well, with the school record, if you find them in the census record, and then it gives you the parent's name, you've got that sorted out right there. You can look at this, and you can determine sometimes that maybe 2 or 3 of the children are siblings, and then the other 2 or 3 children are siblings within themselves, and you're looking at 2 family units, so you know who belongs to whom. It's a great way to find that out. Okay, let me check the comments, guys, because I see things kind of popping up over there. Hey, Penny. Oh, hey, Martha. I'm so glad you could join us as well. And Sandy's here, right? Great, from Texas. Norma's she said, Canada, Newfoundland has been the worst location to locate school records for your father. Yeah, it really varies, and we're going to talk a little bit more about where to find these records, Norma, in just a minute. So, yes, I'm definitely going to address some of that. And actually, guys, this brings up a good point. If you have questions or you have comments that you want to pop in there, go ahead and do that. If you know of an unusual record that you found that pertains to school records, go ahead and pop it in there. We'll make sure that we address it before the end of our talk today. The other really fantastic thing that you can find with these school records, think about this, guys. These school census records, or registers, sometimes they're registers, sometimes they're called school census records, they can serve as a partial substitute for an 1890 census. So without the 1890 census, since most of that didn't survive, this could actually be a partial substitute. So if a family's children were going to school and they are listed out into that school census record, you've got people in place in time through that 1890 time period if they survive for your area. And so it certainly doesn't give you everybody, but it gives in a community, but it gives you those whose children were attending school. So it can be a partial substitute, and that can be critical for when you're really stuck in that 1890 census, or that 1890 time period when that census wasn't there, because I think that's a big trouble spot for myself. It's a big trouble spot for a lot of you guys. I know that I hear your questions when you ask me that. So absolutely, that's a good thing to go after those. Now, There are other types of school records that you might be a little more familiar with. There's the yearbooks, okay? Not necessarily a formal record because it's not, it's not a county record or anything like that, but it is created from the school. More and more yearbooks are coming online. I've seen them on Ancestry.com. I've seen state archives who have their own digital collections, so be sure and check out the yearbooks for those kinds of things. School newspapers, again, starting to see some of those come online. Check your local county libraries for those, actually. The administrative records, so county records that are detailing the running of the school. So kind of similar. It kind of goes along with that school register. But these are maybe school board meetings. They're any kind of records that, the county created that had to do with the running of the school, whether it was building the school, whether it was a teacher's pay, those kinds of things, naming a teacher, hiring a teacher. Again, if your female ancestor was a teacher or a male ancestor, that's a potential place to find them in those records as well. I don't typically use the administrative records as much, but absolutely I do go there. And then, of course, report cards or any kind of records that might have been kept in the home. Believe it or not, I've got it came to me in a box of pictures. There were some report cards from the early 1930s for an aunt of mine. And so that had some really interesting clues on it to things that might have been that were going on in the family. So it's another place to look, guys. Exciting. Let me check the comments one more time because I see them coming fast and furious. And again, if you're on YouTube, feel free to add your own comments at the bottom. Let's see here. Oh, Norma, yeah, you live in North Carolina too. Hey, we've got Sherry from Mississippi and Kathy in Maryland, and well, from Maryland, now in Georgia, and Lisa Hay from Tennessee. Oh, we're off from all over. Sherry says she can only find census on the great grandfather, no information. Yeah, it gets really tough sometimes. These school census records, I love it when I get on these records that just teachers who were conscientious and filled everything out on that school census record, and others who unfortunately, did the bare minimum, or there was just not as much required. Sometimes in those really early school census records definitely can be a little bit tougher. But let's talk a bit, though, about where to find the school records, because that's going to be the tricky part, guys. Now, guys, you're not going to have to go, hopefully you're not going to find them in the walls of your home like that couple did that I was at. But typically, you are going to need to go on site for your research for this. There are some online at Ancestry. I have not checked my heritage or Find My Past, but I would assume they probably do have some types of records as well for school records. But these are county records, and a lot have just not been digitized. I've seen actually more yearbooks that have been digitized, some more school newspapers, at least here in North Carolina, have been digitized and have their own projects, but I'm not seeing a lot of the county level school records. So it would benefit you to check out your state library or the county courthouse. If they have those records at that county level, you would need to ask. I would call the courthouse before you go and find out where those records are. So that you don't waste a trip doing that. So check those. So courthouse archives. The other place, check your own personal family records. You might find some interesting things there and find out, again, as I've said before, if they're not on your line, check other lines as well to see if they came down other lines. The other place I would recommend would be to talk with the local librarian in the area that you're researching. So if you have a county that you're researching, talk with that county librarian. Find out what they have in the way of schools. Do they have the yearbooks? Do they have the old school newspapers that you could go through? Do they have any histories that were written up on the schools in the area? Is it possible? They are going to be your best resource, guys, sometimes when it comes to finding these types of records, or where to look for some of these other type of records out there. So I would absolutely encourage you to talk with those guys. All right, let's see what we've got here. I see the comments going, guys. Hey, Carrie from Alberta and Canada, yay. And Kelly from Ohio. Kathy says she found out way back when in the 1700s, some were schooled in old churches, and you found those records in historical societies in that area. That is an absolutely wonderful point to bring up, Kathy. So for some of those early, as she's saying, in the early colonial times or in the 1700s, sometimes children were schooled in old churches, and that so that the records might be in the Historical Society. Absolutely, that's a great place to look. Thank you for sharing that, Kathy. Yes, in those, Penny says in the rural county areas, it is difficult to find school records. Yes, it is difficult to find those records. And to be honest, guys, not all of them survived. Or maybe if they didn't survive physically, maybe they were lost, as I was telling in that story, to find, when they'd been in the walls of this house since I don't know how long, but they were dated 1882 and they weren't discovered until 2019. So that was, we have no idea why those records were in the wall of that house. Whether the teacher had them and was, they got lost if she was visiting that family and they got lost and somehow ended up down the wall or something. So yes, they wouldn't necessarily have all survived. It is very difficult and it's frustrating, but it is worth the look, because if you don't look, you'll always wonder, did I miss something? Yes, Norm, thanks. Yeah, so absolutely. I wanted to come back to what Kathy was saying about taking check with the Historical Society. Also check with the Genealogical Society, because those guys may know where these records are. Occasionally, sometimes if I'm having trouble finding records for a particular area, I will check with the Historical Society, but also contact a local Genealogical Society, because they know what their area has. They know what their county has. They know sometimes the idiosyncrasies of those records and where they're stored. So I try to make use of really what I call that networking, that genealogy networking. You guys have heard me talk about that before. I reach out and I ask to see what others might be finding out there. So anyway, so guys, I'm going to encourage you to absolutely check out those school records. Go that extra mile. They can be tough. It's a little tedious sometimes, and the challenge really is getting them as opposed to understanding them. Once you find them, they're very straightforward records to understand, but just the finding them that can be difficult. So let's recap here, guys. You're going to look for school registers or school census records. That I see that term used interchangeably. You're looking for yearbooks. You're looking for school newspapers. Okay, you're looking for old report cards that might have been in the family. You're looking for the county level administrative records that might be where they named, hired teachers or anything that might have been going on in the community when it comes to regards for the education of the children in the area. Not going to find a ton in those administrative records, but you can potentially find some. You're going to also, when it comes to finding them, check the archives, the county courthouse, check local libraries to see for the yearbooks and newspapers. Talk with that librarian to see where else those records could possibly be for that county, and reach out to a genealogical or historical society to see what they have in their own records, as well as what they know about just the odd places something might be for their particular county. Definitely. So Kathy said, if the church had a fire or was no longer existed, check the old newspapers. Yes, in case of the fire, they often list the teacher and student names in the paper. If there was a fire at the school, the names were listed. Okay, I see what she said. Kathy, that is a wonderful example. And if you have an example of that, if you want to email me that or message me on Facebook, I would love to see a copy of that. What she's saying is, if a school had a fire, that they would, in the paper, they might cover that in the paper, list the name of the teacher and list the students who were at the school. That is a fantastic source. I really hadn't thought about that. That's an excellent place to look. So checking out the local newspapers in case of that type of incident occurred. Wonderful. Yes, Penny said check the poorhouses for list of children. Absolutely. And I'm going to talk about poor records in another Facebook Live video, but the poor records are another fantastic source to find children as well as female ancestors. Absolutely, Penny. Definitely. All right, guys, you guys have some great ideas up there. Some I hadn't even thought of at this point. So I think that's why I love to do these Facebook Lives, because I learn from you, hopefully as much as you learn from me. I'll probably learn more from you guys with this type of thing. So I'm going to wrap this up. If anybody has anything else, go ahead and drop it in the comments, because I'll wrap this up pretty soon here. I would encourage you to check out, if you haven't yet, read the original post that I republished this week. If you are on YouTube, just check the description below. I will put that original post there for you to see there as well. And if you would be so kind, I would love it if you would share this video or this Facebook Live with, or the post itself with your other genealogy researcher friends, if you think that they might benefit from some of these ideas. So let's see here. So Kathy said she's getting oh, thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate that. She's going to get me a copy of that record. That sounds, I'm really excited to see that. Norma, yes, poorhouse, sometimes known as the almshouse, sometimes it could be anything. So you can check those for the list of the children. And as I said, I'll be talking about using records for the poor in a future Facebook Live video. So we will be addressing that in the future. I think you guys are going to really enjoy that one too. It's an out of the box, and you guys know I love out of the box research tips, and that one definitely is, just as school records are. They're not the norm. So, okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for now. Have a great day, and I will talk with you next week. Bye.